content of everything.
Are you content of everything, COE? Are you live? So this is part two. Oh, Raj, you're going to introduce us, or shall I introduce us?
Let's let the white man introduce.
So this is the second week where we're going to have more discussions, hopefully, of a more amicable and less I'm upset, I'm walking off kind, which happened last week, about Englishness, English identity, what it means and what the problems and issues are facing us as English people, and it's something that Raj wanted to see discussed again this week.
I thought when I listened to the conversation, big up to Braden, I do know Braden, I just didn't think it was a conducive or productive conversation.
He wasn't that sober,
on such a serious topic, because this is a topic that I kind of feel that is important. I don't personally, my own standpoint, just a quick overview, I don't see myself as English, I see myself as British, WC, and on top of that, I don't see what John Cleese said as being racist.
No.
I think it's just an observational fact.
And what did he say, just to remind us all?
He basically said that London is not an English city anymore, something to that effect.
Yeah.
If I said it wrong, then somebody.
No, and he was condemned by the Mayor of London and by all sorts of media people for being racist and so on.
What's your kind of stance on that comment?
Well, as I said last week, I think what he said was an accurate observation. I've noticed this myself, having been brought up here. I live up the road here. I get a bus down here, and over the last 10, 20 years, I've noticed that more and more people are not only not English, but not even speaking English. So to the extent now that when I get a bus down the road here on a Sunday, no one speaks English at all on the bus. So we get there's no English speaking people. Dude. So should this matter? Is this an issue? I think we're not allowed to say, we meaning English, we're not allowed to say there is an issue. That many of us feel uncomfortable with living with and sharing our lives with people who don't obviously share our history, our culture, our traditions, our background. By history, I mean going back to the Civil War, back to the Elizabethan settlement, back to the relationship between the monarch and the parliament and the legislature. By culture, I mean all those things that we identify as being English. And now we're living cheek by jowl with people who we don't share that shared value, that shared history with, and that makes many of us feel uncomfortable. And that's not racism in my view at all, any more than it would be if the same phenomena happened to the Japanese or to Nigerians or to Saudi Arabians, or even Turkey. So I think this is a fair observation. It's not something we should be hung up about, but there are demographic changes, as some people call it, that are happening to this country, which are alarming many people. And some of the demographic predictions for the future are that English people would be a minority in England within, say, 50 years. And in fact, that's actually the prediction for every single European country, that the indigenous population would be a minority within perhaps one generation. Should this bother us? Well, many people say, well, no, why should it be? To be an issue for us is
from camera to camera, I can see that.
Is racism. I don't think it's racism any more than it would be for the Aboriginals or other peoples who have an attachment to their land, who are suddenly living cheek by jowl with people who, in large numbers, who are now living in the same geographical area as them, and that becomes an issue for them. So I think that's just a natural human thing.
I think your take on, like, if you just give your background as well, that would be good.
Basically, I'm of like a Turkish Bosnian background. I grew up in a very English town, High Wycombe. I'm not sure if you know where High Wycombe is. So basically, what I think about what John Cleese said. Now, what John Cleese said was an observation in terms of the actual words that came out of his mouth, or whatever he typed on Twitter. Yeah. However, with some of these quotes, you have to look at subtleties sometimes. So it's true, English people have become a minority in London. However, sometimes when people mention how London is foreign or how London is non-English, they are code words for people basically trying to say that London is a shithole because there are too many foreigners there, or there are too many people of ethnic backgrounds. Now, this might sound a bit anecdotal, but as growing up in a majority English town, I had many friends who in many cases wouldn't even come to London, and when I would ask why, they would simply say it's crap because there are too many of so-and-so people there. or it's dangerous because there are too many Muslims there, or too many this people and that people. And sometimes, you know, this country has a problem in that there is a huge rural and urban divide. So people from more rural areas of England, where the population is either 90% white English, they have a problem understanding multiculturalism. And sometimes it's not just the English people's fault, sometimes it's also the fault of people of foreign backgrounds who possibly need to integrate more as well. But this country at the moment, we're at a precipice and we're at a huge divide. And if we continue down this route, we might, you know, things might unfortunately boil over, and I hope that's not the case. But some of the things I've heard over time, I don't think are helpful for inter-ethnic relations in this country.
Did you have any thoughts?
What John Cleese said was factual, right? It's the fact that he's upset by that implies the racism. Not what he stated. He made a correct observation, but he seems to think it's a negative thing, or that it saddens him. As for London no longer being English, it's always been a city of immigrants.
It's been an international.
I mean, going back to the Huguenots who came to East London, at the poorest part of London. I have a theory that the Cockney accent and the dropping of the H's comes from the French accent, hotel and such like. When the
I hadn't thought of that before.
Well, it's a theory, and then Huguenot churches were turned into synagogues when poor Jewish immigrants turned into mosques. Yeah, exactly. So East London has always been the home of the poorest in London, the immigrant communities, whether they were Huguenot, Jewish or Bangladeshi, and the East End of London where all the sewage would gush out towards. That's why it was always the poor end of town, and the West End was the rich end. So London has always been multicultural, multi-ethnic, but maybe white Huguenots and white Ashkenazi European Jews blend in a few generations later more easily than the Bangladeshis, because they are visibly foreign, and that is what John Cleese perhaps means when he says the town's no longer English.
Can I just give my input on this? Because I've always said that if I see myself as British Punjabi Sikh, I don't see myself as English. I think English is a race, and I'm a Punjabi by race. But I'm a British person, and I love the UK. A lot of people call me British Raj, or I'm a freaking traitor. But you know, I live here, and I want the best for the UK, even though I condemn their colonial past. But the thing is that if I went back to the Punjab, where my people are from, which is now more of an ethnic kind of Sikh state, Punjabi state, and there was 30% Chinese people, and the area started changing, and the language started changing, the food started changing, the whole area started changing, I would be upset, not because I hate the Chinese people, but because I would feel like my culture or my people's land is being changed. I think what John Cleese is kind of saying isn't a racial thing. I think it's more of a loss of identity feeling when he's coming to looking at his own homeland, and London in particular. I don't see it as, if you're upset about it, I don't think that's an issue per se. It's what you do with it when you're upset. If you're just saying you're upset and you're explaining, look, I don't hate these people, but I love what it was like before, I don't see a massive issue with that being, too controversial in my opinion.
So you're not English, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
You're not English?
No.
Are you a Londoner?
I'm a Londoner, I'm British, and a Punjabi Sikh.
So in a sense, you're from England as well?
Yeah, I mean, I always say I'm made up of 3 components, and without each one, I wouldn't be who I am. I'm British.
Can I
I'm
challenge
Punjabi by
what
ethnicity and Sikh by religion.
Can I just challenge what you're saying?
Yeah.
I recall as a child when I came down here to Speaker's Corner, and I saw Lord Soper, who's now dead. He was a Methodist preacher, a very famous one. He had obviously in the House of Lords. And you can still see footage from that time. And the people down here were not multiracial. They were 99% white at that time.
They might be Irish, Polish, Huguenot.
But they weren't. Most people down here now are not white. They are Arabs or whatever they're from. So there has been a substantial change, for good or not. I'm just saying that I don't think to say we've always been like that is misleading.
Well, what I'm
because
saying is
there's been quite a substantial change since
even
in my lifetime.
You wouldn't notice whether someone was an Anglo-Saxon or a Scotsman or Irish or Ashkenazi Jewish because they're all the same colour.
Maybe.
Yeah, so
you'd have to
I meet
ask
a lot
the
of
person,
people
you'd
that
have
are
to get
from...
An
them.
Ashkenazi Jew may or may not have been the same.
So, for an example, the Polish, within 3 or 4 generations,
Yeah.
I guarantee you the descendants
they'll
will
be just like
pretty
the
much
English.
be English.
Yeah.
And they will say we're from Polish descent.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Whereas
saying.
we are
It's
always going to
a
be...
few
I mean,
generations later,
it is a
it's
colour
easier
thing,
to
though. Whether we like it or
amalgamate.
not, it is a colour thing.
I think I agree with Raj, because when people talk about English identity as being not racial but an ethnic identity, maybe they mean our shared culture, our shared history. But I think there is a racial side to it as well in reality, and that's the elephant in the room people don't mention, because there is an element of being white about it. Now, of course, whiteness is not an English thing; it's a French thing, it's a German thing, it's a Finnish thing, whatever. But it is nevertheless a race. So
You can become English if you look
so
English.
when people mean that, when John Cleese mean that, I think implicit in that was a racial element, not exclusively, but in addition to the ethnic, which is a cultural, which is a historical, which is a shared values thing. So it's a package thing. But I think English identity is, as Raj I think you say, partly racial. So you couldn't just be an Eskimo that came here and said, I'm an Englishman, put on a top hat and smoked a pipe or whatever, and I'm an Englishman. That wouldn't quite work. Although it might do now, but it wouldn't in the way I'm talking about it. There has to be some indigenous relationship with a country.
Does it come down to religion?
No, because I'm an Englishman and I'm a Muslim, so does that make me a foreigner? No.
But I think
Sorry, dude, I've got another white person here that you want.
A white person? Oh my gosh! Congratulations!
I'm outnumbered.
Wow. Do come in.
Where's the mic? Come on, bit
You've got a
white
face.
privilege.
What's your name?
White
Will. Oh, nice English name. And
There's only one brown person in it. What's going on?
did you come here by accident or you?
German name.
I mentioned
Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it.
the
the
war.
Anglo-Saxons come from
I
Germany.
mentioned the war.
And because my name is Paul, it's actually a Greek word, Paulus, which unfortunately means small in Greek. But have you heard? Are you aware what we're discussing at all?
Bit. I was just caught on to John Cleese.
So basically, John Cleese said
We're not talking
that
about comedy. We're talking about.
he felt that
talk about 40
London,
towers.
London is not English. Exactly.
That's what we're talking about.
The demographic kind of change in London. He doesn't feel like it's what he grew up in. So
It's not English, is it?
Yeah, he doesn't feel like it's somewhere that he.
Are you aware of that? Have you heard the news about that?
I didn't see the comment.
No.
But I asked you, what does he mean by English?
Well, that's the question. That's what we're discussing. What is English? What is identity? And is it what challenges face us as English people in London? And so he just asked, is religion part of it? I say, well, I'm a Muslim and I'm English, but I'm just as English as I was before. I mean, if I'm a Christian and I follow Jesus as my Lord, that's okay. But hang on, Jesus was a Middle Eastern, a brown-skinned Middle Eastern, Aramaic-speaking Jew from 2,000 years ago, and somehow that's less foreign than me following also another Middle Eastern guy from a bit more recent times from the same part of the world. I mean, somehow one is alien and foreign, another one isn't.
One's
they both come from the same.
One's established for 1,000 years.
It should, but in terms of the DNA of the religion, they both come from the Middle East,
the
from
same
non-white people.
Jesus.
That's kind of all I'm saying. So, jumping in the deep end here, but do you have any thoughts about what English identity is, if it exists at all?
Well, I said I believe it's kind of a social construct, right? It's constantly changing as our history changes. So we're actually recreating it right now.
But do you find it
this
controversial?
idea that we need to conserve the past is really just illusory. I think
But do you think I could ever become English?
just get on
Raj,
with your life.
hang on a
So you're limiting.
It's an English person, English person.
Oh, all right. Get the brown man out.
Get the brown out. Now, my question is, I'm going to challenge that now on the basis that part of our English identity is that we have a shared history, so we can look back and we look at the English Civil War, we can talk about the way that the settlement with Parliament, the English settlement, the Parliament and the monarch, and the relationship between how laws are made, and so on. And this isn't just something that's changing every 5 minutes. I know some things are, but in terms of the constitutional settlement, what we have today is pretty much the same as we had under Victorian era, as we had under the 100 years before that. That hasn't changed. Now, particularly with the EU, there may have been some change with that EU law. But if we're coming out of the EU, we're back to where we were for many, many, many generations.
So are you saying that history is kind of objective, like we all have the same idea as history? Because even our own idea about history in the present is changing as we go through time. So
I'm saying that there are some constants in our identity which just seem to continue inexorably throughout our generations. And I mentioned the political and the governance aspect as being one. And I find it it's much more anecdotal, subjective, but when I go abroad, even to my beloved France, I'm aware that I'm an Englishman. how can I, here I'm like a fish in water, I swim around, I'm not aware of the water. If I go to that pond over there, the water tastes different, although it's still water, and I'm still swimming around in it, but hey, I've got to be slightly more careful with the menu that I don't order, horse or oysters or whatever, not, snails or something, but pretty much the same, but it is different, it's a different flavour to it. Even though we're mostly the same, actually, the French and English are the same, pretty much, I think.
But do you feel it's racist that somebody like John Cleese would say that he feels that English has gone and that he feels like it's something as a bad thing? Would you say that's racist? Because some people are calling him a racist, and I don't think it is.
It's difficult. I don't know what he meant by that statement. It's difficult to say. Choose how many words? 10 or something.
It was.
And people were kind of extrapolating along it.
Volumes and volumes of commentary from 10 words.
No, I think.
Comment here.
I'd like to add something. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
My name is Maria Elena Fernandez. I'm
Where are you from?
Mexican American. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. My parents are.
So you're not a fan of Trump then?
He's the worst thing that has happened to us.
Funny, I could go there.
Break down that wall.
Yeah, exactly. So, from my perspective, just to get a perspective from across the pond and very different, historical context. But I'll just, one of our struggles that we have in the U.S., we have a very different history, but I think really the answer is to cultivate a pluralistic identity as a nation. I think I agree with what you're saying. It's a social construct, and the history you're talking about, or the
continuity
continuities that you're talking about, that's also based on hegemony. That's based on a dominant culture and a dominant history, and those who won all the wars, etc. And those who lost, or those who were marginalized in any way, our stories are not included. So if we can, I would like to see that in my country, and I not that it's easy, not that there aren't growing pains. I think profound and difficult growing pains. But many cultures and many societies have gone through them at different times, and I think that's what we're up against. Are we capable of broadening our vision of what a country and a nation is, that it can still be the same political entity and even the same dominant culture in terms of the let's say the language and how the institutions and political institutions operate, but can we have a inclusive vision where there is room for a variety of cultures, and we all abide by those,
I think that's a good point. I think as a nation, as a United Kingdom, we've always been like that, because the Scots and the Welsh and the English and the Northern Irish or the Irish, whatever, it's always been pluralist in that sense. It's never been homogenous culturally, because we've always had the Scottish people who eat their food and do their thing, had a separate legal system to some extent. But I think what we've done in Britain, which is perhaps a really good thing, historically England, is we've institutionalized opposition. So we have the leader, Her Majesty's opposition, the leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, it is an official title. The opposition is part of the system. And even down here at Speaker's Corner, you talk about the minority voices that have been silenced, but they haven't really been silenced, because Speaker's Corner was set aside by Parliament itself in the 19th century to allow trade unionists and others to demonstrate without being arrested for preaching the peace. And people like Karl Marx came down here, Lenin came down here, George Orwell came down here, and these were hardly part of the establishment. And they were allowed by law to speak without being molested, and they were never arrested. That's how Karl Marx ended up in London in the first place, was because he couldn't find an unmolested safe haven in France and Germany and Belgium, where he was kicked out. So he found refuge in London and was allowed to exist for all his life in London without ever being arrested for anything. So we have a tradition of tolerance in England, surprisingly perhaps, and institutionalized opposition. The opposition is respected and accepted and allowed to have its voice. Are there limits to this? Yes, of course there have to be limits to this, and that's the question we're here today. I think there is an English identity, not just continuity of history. I think there's an ethnic element to it as well, and we shouldn't be shy of saying that. Just as the Japanese have an ethnic identity, the Nigerians do, the Saudi Arabians do, whatever, why shouldn't we recognise the English identity as well? And I think that is a valid point. Should we recognise it and treasure it and promote it? Why not? Because we as a country, and the Scots as well and so on, have given the world so much. everything from the Industrial Revolution itself, the invention
say
of the
that,
steam
they're gonna go
engine,
mad.
even the World Wide Web. Even the World Wide Web
gonna go
was actually invented by Sir Tim, what's his name? He was an Englishman who's alive today. So
go mad.
Tim
There's a lot of anti-
Berners-Lee, he's actually Berners-Lee. He actually invented the World Wide Web, which all the world now
Yeah,
uses.
but it doesn't,
So
I'm not implying or suggesting to erase that. In fact, I'm completely against erasing anybody, and I acknowledge, of course, that history and, you know, even as I said, the history of the winners.
Come on, white people,
However,
come
I do think that there must be a way where we can have,
No, I've got
you
very
know,
bad
that whole
sense.
concept of both and, you know.
But we do
Hey,
already.
can I say
Yeah.
something?
We already
Can I
do.
say,
We do
I've been to
in
LA
England.
twice. I don't like the place. I'm being honest with you.
It's difficult. It's a difficult
It's
place.
nice
It's so
to look
spread out,
at.
isn't it?
It's
As
nice to
you-
look at, but I wouldn't live there.
No.
And the thing is, no offense, and I was
San Francisco is much nicer.
But what I did realise, which is a positive about America, is that I was quite shocked when I went to LA airport that there were so many Chinese and Mexican people there. In fact, I very rarely saw an African American or even a white person once in a while in that particular area. And it's only when
In
you
the
went.
airport
It's only when you
area?
went to Orange County and places like that, then I started seeing more white people. But the one thing I did find is that whether someone was Mexican, Chinese, whatever, they all, if you ask someone you're American, they would all answer yes, and quite patriotically. The problem with the UK is that we've got
It's
lots of
different.
immigrant groups.
It's a different
and
history.
yeah,
it's a different-
yeah, so there's a big difference. So
They're a
there's a big
nation of
difference.
immigrants to start with.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
It's a different
so with
history,
America,
yeah.
there's
UK
this
has
kind of
an ethnic-
there's an inclusivity here of the country.
Europe
Whereas with the
does.
UK, there's an
America
ethnicity
doesn't.
to being
The
English.
Raj, that's
No,
where you're
I
wrong.
see that.
Europe, there's more of an ethnic exclusivity within nations.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for, let's say, a Pakistani person to become English. They can become British
Yeah, I
and
agree.
like the British identity, but they can't. It's really hard for them to
Yeah.
be English. They can be proud of being from England,
Yeah.
support England, play for England in their football team, but to be a proper English person,
I agree with you. I've had this argument a lot with white SJWs that try and protect me, going, God, you are English, and I'm trying to say that.
There's a white man trying to say
Oh, go on,
something.
go on,
here.
talk one.
I think the point is that you have your British identity,
Yeah.
and you are a British citizen.
I'm a British
and you
Punjabi
have your, Punjab. I mean, I was about to say Indian. But
No, I'm not
you go-
Indian. Boo to
well, there you
India,
go.
man.
That we can go even deeper on that. But the British Asian child, for example, let's go with kids, has a British identity, a British citizenship, and he has his back home, so to
Yeah.
speak, identity as well. If that kid is then English as well, the white English kid will perceive it that he has something I don't have. Because if he's just as English as him, the white kid or the Anglo-Saxon kid is English in a different way. You know, in a way that's in the blood, in the sense that he is possibly an Anglo-Saxon. Someone like Tommy Robinson actually isn't ethnically in his DNA.
got
He
Tommy
is
Robinson.
Irish.
Yes.
And I think Tommy Robinson grew up feeling not English enough because his family were not really from England and he felt like he didn't fit in. And when you don't fit in, you can't beat them, you join them, you try even harder to be more English than the English.
But I think one of the strengths is the fact that you have this kind of umbrella term called British and the
Hang on,
United
there's a white
Kingdom.
man there who was
Oh,
not
come
gay.
on, come on.
Right,
British, let me
right.
finish. British and
I
United
must not hear more
Kingdom.
from white people,
Oh,
English
my God, look,
people.
the Asian man.
Not from not from Raj.
Colonial past has come back to haunt us.
Where do the
oppressed.
roots of
Thank
Britain
you.
come from?
Good question. Excellent.
I mean, because
What's the question?
Where do the
where's
roots
the
of
roots of British, the concept of being British come from? 'Cause, I mean, I don't know how true it is.
as a modern political term,
And
As an
cultural
identity.
or a historical
Well, it's
identity.
evolved over history from the
But-
Roman Empire falling,
Yeah,
and then there's kingdoms,
But even before
Mercia,
that,
Wessex,
like,
Sussex.
aren't we all African?
Oh,
Oh, you're talking-
Well, what's
That's
the
what-
latest theory? Is it mitochondrial DNA, where there are various
get Rasmus going.
different
I mean,
evolutions throughout the planet, or was that an out of Africa thing? I don't know.
I-
But we're dealing with that's hundreds of thousands of years ago.
I'm not an expert on that, but I
neither am I,
think
but I'm saying
that's
there
the
seems to be-
strongest argument.
Yeah.
Humans did actually come
But to be honest, I don't think the masses are too.
But we weren't-
I don't think the masses are too
But Africa
interested
maybe
in that
wasn't
argument.
Africa as we see it today. It
Yeah,
may have
yeah.
been a very lush, you know, a lot of it's desert in North Africa today, obviously. It was a
So
very,
what-
very
the-
different climate.
The thing is,
and so on.
what I'm interested in, when do you cut off that bit of history? And then everybody is British, French, Scottish, or whatever it may
But
be.
those are national
I
identities.
mean, you mentioned the Roman Empire.
yeah.
So for you, is that where history starts?
No.
And
Well,
that's where identity
all right.
is
Well, what I
formed?
mean by the English, I mean the Anglo-Saxons. So the Angles and the Saxons, they come obviously from parts of what we know Germany or northern Denmark, and they were tribes that emigrated here.
But they also
and then-
mixed with the native
The native
Brits.
Britons,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
who are
they
what
did.
we would call the Celts,
Yeah,
the
the
kind of
Celts,
Welsh
yeah.
and the Picts or the
The
Scots,
Picts,
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Could we say the people
they
that
were
give
kind
their
of
name
pushed
to the land?
to the side. So the dominant Anglo-Saxons, what became the English people, are the Anglo-Saxons, and that's what I obviously am an Anglo-Saxon. Although I apparently have a little bit of French as well, but that's another story.
Talk as if England is a country.
It is. You're in it, sir. Welcome to England, sir.
not a
You're
country.
standing in it.
It's a nation, it's
No,
not a
of course
state.
it is. It's a nation.
Region.
It's a-
Britain.
No, it's a nation.
It's a nation.
It's a nation.
It's a historical nation.
And you're
They're playing
standing
the
in its
World Cup.
We don't have
capital.
an English passport.
That's true.
You can't have an
But
English.
they-
We don't have an English
excuse me. We're
passport.
trying to have an
They're playing the World Cup.
Hang on, we're having a
You have a
discussion here.
British passport.
Yeah, but how do they play in the
It's
World
still
Cup?
a nation.
They're not
As you
considered.
know,
a nation.
England is a
Born in the
nation.
region
We are
of Britain.
the United
Russia wasn't a
Kingdom.
na-
The United
Russia didn't have a
Kingdom of
passport
England,
till
Wales,
about
Scotland, and
1992.
Can we keep it to one talk?
Can we go on to
Same.
England? As a matter of record, England is a nation. Just
Yeah.
ask any
It's a
historian.
nation.
We are United Kingdom of England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland in one kingdom, which is the kingdom of Her Majesty the Queen, who just lives about a mile over there, probably having tea as we speak.
And this is her park.
And this is her royal park. So we're standing in. So she is our sovereign in that sense, our queen, the Queen of England. So we do clearly have a political and legal identity, recognised as such by the EU and the United Nations and so on. Even if we weren't, we'd still be what we are. The question is, well, one to raise more controversially, is that all the demographic predictions of demographers, i.e. population predictions for the future, suggest that English people will become a minority in England within, say, 50 years or so. And actually the French in France within 50 years, the same for Germany, Denmark and Holland and
You
so on.
believe that?
Well, I don't. This is what they're saying. They could be wrong, but that's the prediction. And the way change has happened in Europe, say in the last 20 years, if that trajectory happens,
be underwater
it's
anyway.
not going to be that surprising if it does happen. The question is, does this matter? If it was to take place, should we be concerned about it or not? That's my question.
I personally think
To English people,
I
not to
personally
anyone
don't
else.
think it's going to happen.
Okay.
Because many minority groups who have emigrated from nations or cultures where people make lots of babies, lots of children, they will eventually assimilate. Maybe not in this generation, but probably in the next generation. And they will become just like the standard British Englishman who probably has, one child or two children max. They won't be making 6 children, 7 children, etc. I don't think that people of minority backgrounds who right now have not well integrated to UK society
name
will,
names,
will
or-
continue on that path.
You
I
mean
won't
Muslims?
name names.
Oh, no name names.
Come on,
please.
just don't be unpleasant.
All right, what basically?
It's just you and me, there's no one else watching.
I'm not saying what I think, but people generally say
You mean
Muslims.
Muslims?
People generally say Muslims are like that. But I think eventually people integrate over time.
I've got to respond to that. So, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
As an English Muslim, I would say, what is it that Muslims are supposed to integrate into? Oh, because England.
I'm not saying what I think. I'm Muslim myself,
Right.
so I'm not gonna
But
argue
is it-
this point.
but
I'm
the-
saying what
the point is what
I'm
they
saying
say.
the fears of
Yeah,
the
that's what I'm addressing.
native English people
Yeah,
regarding.
that's
the
what I'm
Muslims.
addressing because England has many excellent qualities. It also has a dark side. It has rampant alcoholism. It has recently on the BBC there has been a massive increase in STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, because of promiscuity amongst the population. A massive increase in gonorrhea and syphilis and you name it, because of the laissez-faire freedom of
it's just like-
whatever. We've got alcoholism, we've got materialism and so on, and godlessness. We're not aware of the divine and how God also has a role in our society and in our lives. So are we integrating into that? Should we integrate into that? I would say Muslims stay clear of that.
All right,
on
Paul,
the one
I need
hand.
to interrupt you.
But on the other hand,
hold on. Let
I
the
know.
brown man talk. Come
No.
on, you got a lot of white talk today.
I'm finished.
A lot of white
I
dominating
haven't finished,
here.
Raj.
All right, after you finish, let me talk.
Thank you, Mr. Brown
I
man.
know you've been very dominated today.
Oh, excuse me, I thought we were going to have a discussion English people, not the Sikh voice here.
No, I'm the voice
So
of the people.
there are things I think that Muslims can contribute very powerfully to in our society, and that is the renewal of traditional values, traditional family values, respect for elders, not shunting them off to some care homes and
We're
rot.
already there. It's renewal.
Exactly,
Yeah,
renewal.
they were there, yes.
These are traditional English values the Victorians and their predecessors treasure, but we have lost since the 1960s. I think Muslims can give voice, if only we would listen to them, to values which are perennial relevance to revitalization of our society as a humane place of compassion and care. Rather than shunting off our elderly people in care homes, the promiscuity damages families and divorce, abortion on demand, which is now a so-called human right, which most of the time just kills babies, is something that Islam is dead against, as is Sikhism traditionally. this is something we can bring back to the table, which English people have forgotten about. So we can, and this is actually a very Islamic role that Islam, Quran. It's I'm finished.
Propaganda's over yet? Is it?
Well, I'm not sure okay. Is that we can remind people of these things and encourage them to bring it back. So instead of assimilating and having 1.3 children and so on, I hope Muslims assimilate, but also renew the culture, renew the society, and call people back to the worship of one God, the God of Jesus and Moses and so on, because they've forgotten that as well. They worship mammon, they worship the stock exchange and standards of living and sex and whatever, the self. So I think Islam or Muslims have a really key future in this country and throughout Europe in a very positive way, without assimilating to the really bad sides which are corrupting. And I mean, why does Europe exist? What is the point of our civilization? We don't know anymore as Europeans. Why do we bother existing? What is our goal? What is the reason for Western civilization to exist? We seem it's all about equality and having a good time, but that's not really a goal. It's a means. Yeah. So that's my view.
The monologue's over. The propaganda's done.
So what do you?
No.
I'm talking white people here.
No, white people, get out of the way. The brown man's in town.
This is a discussion between white people
forget about the white people, because this is about London being different.
This
and I'm
was
one of those
why we came
people.
together, Raj.
I'm one of those people that is making London different. Yeah, so I have a voice in this, and I'm a British individual.
But you're all right.
So yeah, I'm all right. I'm one of the good guys. But the thing is, this kind of narrative I hear from a lot from Muslims, that the British culture is very one-dimensionally painted. Being promiscuous, alcoholism and stuff like that. There is a lot of other things within British culture
I know that you don't have to tell me that.
encompass. So you need to say it as well, because you're giving a very negative.
Hold
on, Paul. Let me finish.
Raj, can I talk to some English people here?
Let me just talk.
Because you're talking a lot.
Let me talk.
I'll talk to some English people about this.
Hold on.
You're not an English.
Let me
by
say.
your definition.
Hold on a second. It doesn't matter. The point is, I asked you to talk about this as well. So if I knew the conversation was just to be about English people, I probably wouldn't have asked you to talk about it.
But that's what we said. You said let's try 2 or 3 or 4 English people.
I said let's talk.
And then when we get together, you want to dominate it and say.
For the last 10 minutes, have I spoken?
You've been waiting patiently.
Very patiently. So Paul, get off your high horse and stop crying and let me talk. Because I might call you racist like Raspik does to everybody. So the thing is,
you're a friend of Tommy Robinson. You're a supporter of Tommy Robinson.
So the thing is,
when it comes to Tommy racism,
you're not letting me. I was very polite and let me speak.
All race is a Muslim.
Let me
Tommy
speak.
Robinson's
Let me speak, everybody. So what I'm trying to say is that I can't believe I have to fight for the side of the English in terms of what is good about the culture. Now, what you're looking around you is the culture, the humour, the art, and there's a lot of things within Islam that restrict these things that are good about the culture. So you're painting all the good stuff, but you're not putting in the bad. And there's a lot of bad that accompanies Islam, which you are not highlighting. You're just giving a sugar-coated view.
Let me explain why, Raj.
And so the reason,
because EDL people like you only talk badly about Muslims.
I'm not
EDL people like you speak badly. You support Tommy Robinson.
So what? I don't support anybody. I'm just my own man.
You don't support him anymore. You publicly
I'm my own man. I support myself.
You don't support Tommy Robinson anymore.
So basically, big up Tommy Robinson, but I don't support any man.
Big up Tommy Robinson, a racist thug who attacks Muslims.
So what I'm trying to say is that.
Nice one, Raj.
What I'm trying to say is that. But the way people are talking is like you're trying to make out that people that have concerns, legitimate concerns about another culture that is very dominating coming in, which has some positives. I'm against abortion.
What's your name, friend?
I'm against abortion. I'm for traditional values.
I'm
for marriage.
I want to hear
stuff
Will's
like
voice.
But there are also big negatives that come with that package.
You're repeating yourself.
No. That come because you.
I want to hear Will.
Hold on. Let me just look. The more you talk, the more I'm going to talk. So let me
Raj, that's not a very adult thing,
no, because you've been interrupting me for the last couple of minutes, shoving me out the conversation like I'm some
I
little
want to
brown
hear Will,
immigrant
who's an
that
Englishman
cannot talk
on this
about
subject.
that I cannot. Hold on, I'm going to say
you're
something.
You're an EDL
to you.
supporting
Let me say something to you.
Excuse me.
Paul, you're sounding racist, yeah, and I don't like saying that because you're saying to me as a brown person, I cannot talk about this issue about John Cleese saying that London is not English.
You told
anymore.
me that.
So the thing is, when I came over to you 3 hours ago and I said,
and now you're taking over.
Hold on, can we talk?
You're lying, Raj.
Hold on, can we talk?
No.
We, you know the word we, not the piss, but the we that we're talking like we're all together.
Sing it for me.
You shoving me out and saying no, I want the English person
I do want to hear the English person.
is disrespectful.
No, well, I'm sorry, it's
His
disrespectful.
voice is not going to go over my voice because he's English.
Okay, look,
His voice will come
Raj,
in because
maybe it was
he
a
has
mistake
valid
to invite
point.
Raj in this in the first place.
If you're saying you're going to talk because you're English, then you need to leave.
Yes, I do. That's what I'm saying.
You need to leave.
Okay.
Then move then. I'm not having a conversation with a man that is
because
dragging it into
let me say this.
English
When
than you
Raj
need to
approached
talk.
me several times this afternoon, he said, I want to get 2 or 3 English people together to talk about the English identity issues.
I
was
said
talking,
we.
Raj, I'm talking last week. Now what he's doing now, he's taking over and saying that I'm not really interested in the Sikh perspective
You're
today.
being derogatory
I'm
by
interested-
saying he can
I'm
talk
interested-
over me because he's English.
I want to hear English
I have a
people's
valid
voices.
point as well to talk in this
I want to hear
situation. It's
English
about
voices,
the
Raj,
immigrant
not
culture.
your voice. Because you are a well-known supporter of a fascist thug called EDL, Tommy Robinson. You're on record 1,000,000 times supporting
My
him.
nickname's Tommy Robinson.
I want to speak to an English guy because we're talking about English issues here, not Sikh issues or EDL issues.
We're not. You're being very patronising here.
Will.
No.
I want to hear
I'm sorry,
Will.
bro. I'm sorry, bro.
Will,
You're
I wanna
not going
hear-
to bully me into this shit. Hold on. 1 minute. Shut up, man. 1 minute.
I'm going to walk away. I'm going to walk away.
Let's get
1
back to
minute.
topic.
1 minute.
Can we get to
1
what sort
minute.
of Will,
1
please?
minute. 1 minute. Let me say something here.
No, you said
when
too
the,
much,
when the
Raj.
narrative comes to he's English, let him talk, and
Yes,
I can't
yes.
talk because I'm Sikh.
You've already talked
That
for
I
10 minutes.
cannot talk because I'm Sikh. You are taking me out this equation of what the issue with this particular topic is.
You are, exactly.
I'm out of the
Exactly.
equation.
Yes. Right. Will,
Oh,
can
you
I
see
talk
that?
to you? Yes.
You
You're
see
out of the
that?
equation.
That's what you call
You are out of the
That's what you
equation.
call prejudice.
Okay, you call it what you want. I want to talk to an Englishman about English issues, as you set it up originally
No.
with me.
I
I
didn't set up, I'm going to bring 4 English
Raj.
people to talk.
Yes, you
I
did.
said, I want to have a discussion about John Cleese's
Yes, exactly.
comment, including from my perspective as an immigrant.
No, you never said that.
All
That's
right,
a
then, well,
lie.
if you don't, then you need to leave
You
then.
never said that. That's a
Well,
lie.
leave then.
You never said at an
Well,
immigrant's
leave. Yeah,
perspective.
move.
All right,
Move.
I've been
Give it
kicked
back.
out.
Give it back. We'll talk. No, he's
I've been kicked
in
out.
the wrong conversation. Move.
Raj, you have lied to me. I will say on camera,
get
this
out.
man Raj has lied to
Move
me.
out, get out.
He set this discussion on false pretenses, and I want to talk to.
No.
In English.
This ain't your
Huh?
conversation.
Yeah.
If you guys still
And you
want
ran
to have a
away.
conversation with me,
You ran away.
with me
You
involved,
ran
I'm
away.
not having a conversation with you.
Of course.
So can we have Will? I want Will to.
Hold on. You're not dictating nothing, Paul.
Will, can you?
You're not
come
dictating nothing.
Raj,
here.
you're stopping the conversation.
Oh, no. You got to leave.
Will.
You got to leave. We'll have the conversation over there. I'll have a conversation with these guys. Because if I can't talk because I'm Sikh, good. So if you come in, because the thing is, here, I'm not going to have a man that I went over to 4 hours ago and said, can we talk about John Cleese's comment about England, London is not England anymore, and when I'm asking you to have a conversation, I'm assuming it's with me as well. And when you're saying he's an English person, let him talk, to me that seems racist.
All right.
No, because you're saying
Yeah,
about...
because obviously, you claim racism about everything. You can't even say the word black without you saying racist. All right, so I'm not saying it was racist. I'm just saying that having the conversation based around solely that only English people can talk about a topic, which includes immigrants, because he's saying that in London is not English anymore, and the reason he believes that is because of people like me.
People who look like.
Yeah, people that look like me. So I don't think here that I'm being unreasonable if I want to contribute to this topic.
You're not being unreasonable.
Speaker's corner, everyone can contribute. That's the whole
English
point,
not
right?
Celtic anymore, you know what I mean? That's my complaint.
Well, I apologise. I'm a bit of a heated mood today, but I'll probably make up with Paul later on. But I'm not having people belittle me like that because it's not acceptable. Anyone could. All right. So if you guys want to carry on the conversation,
Do you want to come in? You said England's not a country, and you were very.
It's not a country.
It's
a
not
region.
It's a region, but it's
No,
more.
but historically, it is a country.
It has a national identity,
It's a
right?
region. When
Come
I
in,
hear
man.
one Englishman,
What's your name,
he
sir?
looks like, my name is Watt, W-A-T-T.
Julian, nice
like
to meet you,
James Watt
Okay.
from Scotland.
There you go.
You call,
James
the Englishman
Bond,
would
you
call
could
me
be
a
you
bastard.
could be the next James Bond.
Well,
Because James Bond was Scottish originally.
yeah.
And there was a hoo-ha when they said, can we have Idris Elba as James Bond?
Yeah.
And everyone said, no, we can't have a black Bond. But
Yeah.
we've had a white English Bond. We had an Irishman playing James Bond. Why not have a black man
Yeah,
playing
but the
James
first James Bond was done in a black man's country, Jamaica.
Bond? Yeah, I didn't know that. There you go.
Yeah.
That's where GoldenEye
Sean Connery.
No, the guy who wrote James Bond.
Sean Connery
Yeah.
acted.
What was the guy?
Sean Connery is
What was
Scottish.
the guy who made James Bond? Who
I
written
can't
the book?
remember his name. I can't remember. It's Jamaica, yeah.
only English people can talk. You as a
That's why it was done there.
even though
This is
comment
where
about London not being
identity,
English
people
anymore,
say it's not about
it's
racism,
actually
it's
affecting
about
the
culture.
When Everybody talk about England and Englishmen and Englishmen. Those days are dead and gone.
But why are you happy about that? Why don't you want the white Englishman to be able to say, I'm from England and I'm English?
He's creating superiority.
Why would it make him superior? We're just all equal.
We're living at
You can be black British, Punjabi British.
yeah, we're living at an
white
age.
English
You're
British.
living at an age with a mixture of people. You have white men who have black wives, brown children. So for you to jump up and talk about I'm an Englishman, you're trying to be superior to the rest of everybody else, ethnically.
Do you mind me asking your heritage?
Well, my father's mother was Irish. They ran away from America during the starvation to Jamaica. A lot of whites ran away during the starvation of the America. Britain had to take up tons of food from Jamaica
There's a lot of Irish blood in the Caribbean.
feed the Americans,
especially.
when they had when they were jumping through windows from the stock market. And my father's father was Scottish. What?
Yeah, there you get the
Because the Irish and the Scots were taken from England as slaves in 1555 to Jamaica. The people who actually civilized England, saved England from starvation, were the black people, were Ghanaians. And
so you're proud of your Irish connection, right? And your Scottish roots. You have
course
some Scottish and Irish heritage.
Of course I do.
Yeah, good. And you're proud of it. Shouldn't the white Englishman be proud of his English heritage and ancestry in the same way that you are?
Yeah, but he's overriding the existence of this gentleman and that one.
Why does it have to be at the expense of another?
Well, he feels that way. It makes him feel as if England is great. England's greatness isn't done by Englishmen. England's
he has a point here, because some people who say they are proud to be English, they generally say we're proud to be English and we feel that England's being taken away due to these influx of immigrants, influx of minority groups. But I don't see how can it be that these groups can coexist? Why does England have to be great with less immigration?
That's right.
Because immigrants, whether they're Irish, whether they're from Jamaica, whether they're from Africa or India, they've built this country, this cannot be denied for the last 300 years.
Yeah, but the thing is, look, as somebody who's been on the kind of, I see both worlds, because I do mix around with people that some people might deem to be racist. Some people say Tommy Robinson's, some of these people are just good, honest, hard-working people that I meet. And I also spend time with the Asian community, my own community, every community. And one of the things that I feel that the British or the white indigenous population feel is that I don't think they're so necessarily against immigration per se, but I think they're against immigration where the cultures do not let's just say kind of amalgamate with the indigenous population. So the Sikhs, I think, I'm going to big up the Sikhs. I think the Sikhs, my own community, have got a good middle ground. Like, if you look at me, the way I'm dressed, I'm very traditional in my dress. My second language is Punjabi. I'm a British Punjabi Sikh, and I have no issue being British, Punjabi, and Sikh. Now, the issue with some communities is that they don't want the component of being British. And so when you take that out, what can connect me with you and me with you? You understand? If you don't see yourself as British, you just see yourself as an immigrant.
No, I see myself.
Yeah, you do, but I'm talking about there are a lot of people I speak to who refuse to see themselves as British. And the problem I'm having is if you can't, let's just say kind of like, have some kind of social cohesion over being British, there's nothing in common with us.
Do you think it goes both ways as well?
Yeah, it does have to go both ways.
An Englishman needs to extend the olive branch out.
Could I bring a point here, valid point? There are more English men and women living in black people's country abroad than there are foreigners living here, right? Carol.
There's something you mentioned about the immigration of the black, the Africans, and Irish. What about Europeans? I would say the French.
No, the Europeans are immigrating to this country.
So can I just give you an overview of what we're talking about? There's a guy called John, you know who John Cleese is? Do you know who John Cleese is? A comedian?
Do you know 40 Towers?
Basically, he's a famous comedian who said that he feels that London is no longer English anymore. He's been called a racist now for saying that.
Yeah, but what about English race? Even English themselves.
Yeah, they're of foreign background as well, yeah.
If you go back to history, who came to this country first?
Look, the Ghanaians are the people who saved Britain from starvation in 1555. when the plague, the Black Plague, right? This block, when they talk about the king gave it to the people or what have you. I said, goddamn lie. When I came here, I remember 1957, my father brought me up. My father brought me up in his car to see this place. 57, I was a young boy. And there's gravestones. All of this is great cemetery. Over there, the Jamaicans take over that corner, and it was about politics. There's no goddamn religion, right? And suddenly, the Methodist Church, what is happening now? The Methodist Church realized that there's too many Arabs, so they bring in boys from prison, brainwash them from prison about the Bible. They don't believe in the Bible, they brainwash them, bring them here, and they're challenging all the Muslims, they're looking to fight. Most of them, these boys around here, young ones,
where are they from?
They're from prison. Take them out of prison.
Let's not get down. Let's not go down this route because let's try and keep under the topic of this conversation about London not being English anymore. Now, people are going to obviously say, "Oh, you're an Islamophobe. You're an shut your mouth here." Because the thing is, critiquing something doesn't mean you hate something. I'm saying that out of all the communities, whether you like it or not, most communities, like the Hindu community, Sikh community, or other communities, have kind of like blended and blended in within the UK kind of society. But there is, whether we like it or not, there seems to be, from whether we believe it or not, but there are people out there that feel that when it comes to certain aspects of the Muslim culture, it goes against the British way of life.
It's jealousy, man. The Muslims have a lot of money. Well, like Knightsbridge, if you're around there.
Like Paul said, man, Christianity comes from the Middle East as well. And there's stuff in Christianity that would go against secular, British laws.
Let me say something. Paul is just a propagandist who comes in here trying to
Have you lived in a Muslim country?
Dictating the conversation. And what I will say about Paul, he needs to look within himself and start to realise that not everything about Islam is hunky-dory. There are some negatives about it.
Yeah.
And some of the negatives is this kind of freedom, restriction of freedom of speech, restriction on certain things that are... I love drawing, I love art, I love music, I love things like that. And unfortunately, these kind of things that, is very much a part of British life, is restricted within a particular culture.
No, it's not. That's not true, no. The only extreme is...
So can you draw a portrait? So I'm a portrait artist. Can you draw a portrait? If I become a Muslim, could I draw a portrait of someone's face?
You can, if you're not strict. If you're not strict, you can.
All right, so if I'm strict, there's no point becoming Muslim when I'm halfway there.
Islam has got different interpretations.
So what I'm saying is that certain things here that,
Have you ever lived in a Muslim country, yes or no?
I haven't personally, but
you have to live in a Muslim country and judge.
So from where we are as a people, as a Punjabi, it was mixed with Sikhs and Muslims and Hindus for hundreds of years, thousands of years. And they had to separate during the partition. And we do have very distinct ways of looking at... How can you tell me the partition is not true when I'm telling you it happened? Do you know about the Indian partition?
No.
So how can you say it's not true then?
Well, because they're Muslim.
Fake news.
He's telling me my own history. You're worse than Paul, for God's sake. All right, let's continue. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that I'm kind of sick and tired of people like Paul here who are going around saying, "Oh, the British." When they talk about British culture, they always bring up drinking, being promiscuous, and all the negatives, but they don't bring in any of the positives. And it's the positives that I love about the UK: the art, the music, the culture, the freedom.
But Raj, what about the positives of Islam?
Yeah, there's a lot of positives. Okay. So I am totally against being promiscuous. I think traditional values is paramount. I even think dressing traditionally and conservatively is good. I think abortion is murder. So I'm very conservative in my views. And I do agree that that is the good bit, but there are also a lot of negative baggage that comes with it. Yeah.
Read about Nawal Saadawi. She's an Egyptian Muslim.
Yeah.
She's iconic.
All right.
Yeah. I'm going to have a sit-down chat.
Yeah, I think we're going to end it now anyway. Pleasure. We will try and... I apologise that it got a little bit heated, but... Just 1 minute. So I will
too much worry about the ethnic background of people. When in other countries...
We could be cousins. I'm Irish heritage.
Yeah.
It could be related.
I'm not normally that hostile, but what's your name?
Yeah.
Anyway,
a lot of whites live in Jamaica. Nobody worry about.
no one dictates whether a brown man can talk in a white conversation about Englishness. If I want to speak, I can speak.
Some
Don't
guy
tell
from
me that I can't speak in
England went
Speaker's
down to
Corner, which is
Jamaica
the land
and set
of
up a
free speech.
Hyde Park corner.
Big up the Kafari Runtings.
And the
You should live in a Muslim country in order for you to judge. The word Muslim. Yeah,
Nobody
I would
entertains
recommend you to read Noah
Right?
Saddam.
There's a whole lot of whites all over Jamaica.
But there's no like racial tension.
Are you changing the subject?
Yeah, we're going to sit down on this chair.
You talk about
You want to come over?
is jealous. Because if you set up a night street and you see these old guys driving the cars,
But they're not even like traditional Muslims anyway.
huh? Making a lot of noise with their exhaust pipe. I'm annoyed about it.
But you know why they come here? They come here not to be Muslim, just so that they can have fun.
It's controlled by Britain, right? Yeah. It's controlled by
It
Britain.
was pretty much made by Britain.
Yeah, I know. Britain found oil. Found all oil.
Content over everything from your humanity.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
I'll give the ball.
Listen.
So, Mo, there are a couple of things. You have to recognize that, number one, today, the amount of information that the average person is exposed to in a day is roughly equivalent to the amount of information a person in the UK would have been exposed to 100 years ago. That's how much the world